Hey, I'm Ben Avery. This is Strangers and Aliens on location in Muskegon, Michigan at the Maranatha Conference Center. Here to ask the question, is Invitation by Bill Myers, Frank Peretti, Angela Hunt, and Alton Gansky worth reading? Let's find out. So last year when I was here for Johnny and Friends family retreats, where my family serves every summer for a few weeks, we are working with families who are affected by disability by giving them a camp experience. And it's great stuff that we get to do as a family. We get to serve and we love doing it. And we love coming here to this place. It's like a home away from home. This is also a place that sometimes my family comes to do our own vacations because it's someplace that we are familiar with and that we love so much. And the retreats that we get to be a part of, I'm just going to brag for a moment here. My kids are amazing. They love serving. They love just being here for families who have been affected by disability in one way or another. And I was a little worried that I might not be able to do this video. Not that I wouldn't be able to record it. I mean, you can always find a little bit of time to do something, you know. But that I wouldn't finish the book because this book comes from their library. And so when I was here before, I got a book from their library called Winter Flight that I got to read and really enjoyed. And then I was here before that and I read No Man in Eden, and I talked about that a long time ago. Both those videos are on our YouTube channel, but they're both Christian science fiction books. And the library downstairs here at Maranatha, it's actually kind of surprising. You go in there and it's the laundry room and library. So the first room is the library, and the second room back is the laundry room. And I can just picture, you know, during the summer when families come and they want to do their laundry, they come in, let the kids pick out some books while mom or dad is doing the laundry. And honestly, mom or dad might be picking a book because they want to sit and wait for the laundry. And they have all the typical stuff. There's a lot of devotional books. There's a lot of Left Behind books. There's Jeanette Oak books. There's Jan Karen. You know, there's all the books you'd expect. Ted Dekker. There's quite a few Ted Dekker books. But I'm always like looking in between those authors to see, like, is there some hidden gem like Winter Flight? Winter Flight's still down there, by the way. If you're watching this and you are going to be at Maranatha Bible Conference and you want to, you know, pick up a book to read, I do recommend reading Winter Flight. But I saw this and I was so excited when I saw this book. Now, this is the only book from the cycle that's here. And I actually was thinking, maybe, you know, this is cycle 1. If it's good, maybe I'll continue and read through cycles 1 through 5 because I own cycle 3. Now, I didn't realize what I was getting when I bought it, but I was at our local used bookstore, and on the spine I saw Myers, Peretti, Hunt, and Peretti was the name that I was like most recognized. And I'm always on the lookout for that, you know, Christian science fiction to ask, is it worth reading? And, you know, I'm looking for independent stuff as well. I want to read independent Christian science fiction because that's part of what I want to write. And you know, that's why I edit the books that I've edited book that I have edited, other book that I am editing. There's a follow-up to A Time for Everything is being worked on right now in between as I'm working on, you know, screenplays and stuff. But that follow-up is called Parabolic Orbits, and it's about, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but it's coming. It's coming this fall. Anyway, I'm always looking for this kind of thing. And so I saw cycle 3 and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Looks like some sort of anthology. I'm just going to get it. So I get it without looking at it. And then when I get it home, I realize it says cycle 3 and that it's the 3rd book in a series written by these 4 people. Now, I do understand that either book 4 or book 5, I'm not sure, Peretti does drop out and another author comes in. But I believe from what I've been able to see now, pieces that I've been able to put together, book 5 is actually like the ending of the cycles and actually has an ending for the series. So that means I'm not going to start with book 3. I almost did. I almost said, let's just read book 3 and see if it stands alone on its own, and we'll see if it's something worth reading without the others. I never got around to it. I was doing other things, getting busy with other things. I get here, I'm looking for something to read downstairs. I find this and I think, okay, there's cycle 1. How am I going to get to cycle 2? Well, cycle 2 is on Libby, and I'm going to be reading cycle 2 on Libby not too long after I leave to go back home. And cycle 3 is on my shelf. I've already got that. Cycle 4, cycle 5, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that. My plan is to cover all 5. Now, it's not going to be like week after week after week, okay? So next week, I'm not covering cycle 2. It's going to be a little while before I can get to that. But I have a feeling I'm going to want to do that because I've read cycle 1. Now, I wanted to wait until after I read cycle 1 to make any kind of commitment, but now I've read it. And, you know, I just have to say, is it worth reading? My answer right now, based on just this one, is yes. Now, here's what's interesting about this. This is not just an anthology, which I thought it was when I picked it up. I thought I was going to get 4 stories, standalone stories by these 4 authors. No. It is a serialized story. It is from story to story to story. This has 4 stories in it, but it is basically been created to be like a serialized television show. In fact, I want to read to you the concept here. In this fast-paced world with all its demands, the 4 of us wanted to try something new. Instead of the longer novel format, we wanted to write something equally as engaging, but that could be read in 1 or 2 sittings on the plane, waiting to pick up the kids for soccer, or as an evening's read, which is how I did it over the last 3 weeks. We also wanted to play. As friends and seasoned novelists, we thought it'd be fun to create a game we could participate in together. The rules were simple. Rule 1, each of us would write as if we were one of the characters in the series. Bill Myers would write as Brenda, the street-hustling tattoo artist who sees images of the future. Frank Peretti would write as the professor, the atheist ex-priest ruled by logic. Angela Hunt would write as Andy, the professor's brilliant but geeky assistant who sees inexplicable patterns. Alton Gansky would write as Tank, the naive, big-hearted jock with a surprising connection to a healing power. Rule number 2, instead of the 4 of us writing one novella together, we're friends but not crazy, we would write it like a TV series. There would be an overarching storyline into which we plug our individual novellas with each story written from our character's point of view. There you have it. We hope you find these as entertaining in the reading as we did in the writing. And I love challenges like this. I mean, people who know the work that I've done collaborative projects like this before in comics. But I've also done, there's the Time for Everything anthology that is just me trying to gather around some writers to give them a challenge and let's see if we can do the challenge. And I have always wanted to do some form of serialized round robin, whatever you want to call it, kind of a book. And something like this. I have an idea. An idea. I'm not going to talk about my idea right here because if I never do it, then, but I have an idea and I have some friends in mind and I have some people who aren't my friends in mind who I'd like to see if we could team up and do something like that. But this series right here of books, it after reading it, I see the TV series idea. It's not just a TV series, although it reminds me of Heroes. Okay, it reminds me of Heroes. It reminds me of X-Men in some ways. It reminds me of George Martin's Wild Cards, which is another kind of a shared universe kind of a thing. The shared universe thing it goes back decades. Harlan Ellison did one. I can't remember all the different ones I was recently reading about, but that shared universe thing, it's a fun thing to do. It's a fun challenge to do. Writers like to do those kind of things, and I had just a deep-seated desire to do that. I don't know if I ever will get to do one, but I would like to. Anyway, when it comes to this one, is it worth reading? I'd say yes. Now, it's not a perfect series. It's not a perfect set of 4 novellas, but each one of the novellas was engaging and entertaining, and there was some heart behind it too, and there's definitely spiritual ideas just baked into the concept alone. The first one, The Call by Bill Myers, does work with Brenda, the tattoo artist, and she and the other characters are brought together. They don't know why. This reminds me a little bit of my series that I was doing for Supersonic Pod Comics, which we have, we're getting ready to close down now completely, but the Randoms, which is random people with superpowers who get brought together, again, heroes and that kind of thing. But they're brought together and it feels like there might be something more than just mere chance because they all have, in some form or another, a little bit of a power, kind of. Andy, that I mentioned, that I read about there, she sees patterns and sees, numbers and, You know, is it a pattern that she's actually seeing, or is it something that was, she's being guided to? Is it the hand of God, or what is it? You know, who knows? Definitely Tank has the power to heal people. Brenda, she draws what she sees in the future, and actually it comes out in tattoos as well. She sees things in tattoos, or sees things and draws them as tattoos, which she does to Tank. She sees actually the crew, the team of 5. There's a 5th, there's a young boy, but the team of 5 she tattoos on his arm without knowing what she even was tattooing. But all the characters are engaging, they all have potential, and they're all used very, very well. Some are used very well, and some are used even better. And so this first story felt like a pilot episode of a TV series. It brings all the characters together, introduces you to all of them, and they have a problem they need to deal with. And unfortunately, for all 4 of the stories, length is an issue. And I feel like sometimes the ending on a couple of these felt a little rushed. I could see where the ending was intentional, but at the same time, the ending to me for a couple of these didn't feel very satisfying if I was sitting down and reading these as a standalone novella. I don't know if they were ever printed as standalone novellas, but I do know you can get them on Kindle and things like that as a standalone where it's just by itself. You can also get the collection as a digital thing, but I do know that they have been released at some point or another as these kind of single standalone things. In the pilot episode, they discover that there are definitely supernatural forces at work. And they don't know if it's demonic. The person, the bad guy who's like kind of orchestrating things, he says that it's actually spirits from the future who are coming to the past. And that's kind of the scientific explanation in some ways. And that's where that atheist professor comes in. He's always looking for he's the Scully of the group. But yeah, it feels like a pilot episode, and it ended like a pilot episode because the bad guy gets away. They kind of stop what's going on, and I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but then they split up, but they know they're going to come back together. And in The Haunted, the second story, which is by Frank Peretti, which probably has the best high concept of all of them, The Haunted is not about a haunted house, but a house that is doing the haunting. And I love that little twist. It's kind of fun. Frank Peretti's character is the professor, and during the first book I didn't see it this way, but during the second book, every time the professor is doing anything, I'm picturing Frank Peretti doing it as this professor. He was a priest, he's now an atheist, and he actually goes on lecture circuits and gives lectures about why following God is delusional, basically. But then he's confronted now with 2 different things. In The Haunted, it's the second thing where there is something beyond the natural that is happening. It feels like a old school haunted house with a twist movie. And as far as the high concept goes, it's probably the best of the group. It also, I think, has maybe the most satisfying ending as far as they actually are part of taking care of and solving the problem. Sentinels is by Angela Hunt. That's a good one too. I mean, they're all good, but this one, again, the ending did not feel super satisfying to me, but the high concept was horrifying. And that's as Andy is at home and she is visiting her grandparents on the beach, birds fall out of the sky and they're dead and their eyes are missing. Fish get washed up on the shore and they're dead and their eyes go missing. And it's gross, it's disgusting, and of course what's going on, why is this happening, what's the pattern here, why? And she's seeing patterns. She sees the pattern that no one else sees about where these flocks and herds of dead animals are just kind of dying and their eyes are missing. And in some ways, this is the story that presents the high concept, I think, without having read beyond this, the high concept that is why this is happening. And that is, she writes, what if God has an enemy and his time is running out? This is where we do step outside of it being an episodic TV show like The X-Files and more into the episodic novel style like Heroes, where they may get involved in a problem, but it really is just kind of to escalate and bring them together and have them discover bits and pieces of what's going on, because the resolution, while they do kind of figure some things out, I just felt like it wasn't as much of a resolution as I was looking for. It didn't feel as satisfying. But the difference is it doesn't have to feel as satisfying because it's part of a cycle and it's going to continue going and the characters are going to continue going. And each episode that they go through is going to teach them something new about their problem, teach them something new about themselves. Every single story is written in the first person, and you are getting the inner monologue for all of these characters and you're learning who they are, except for Daniel. The girl is the best of the bunch, and I'm glad it was the best of the bunch. It was the last one. I wasn't sure if I was going to get it read before we had to leave, and so I was like, am I going to have to do a review that's just covering the first three? But the fourth one, very, very good. That one is where Tank, who is kind of this naive Christian, just out of high school, college age, football player, big guy, but he has the power to heal with his touch. There's a child who shows up that is kind of an impossible mystery. And it's interesting because Tank's uncle is a police officer in a small town, and so you have that kind of being the background to it all. And in the midst of finding out who is this child, there's also a spiritual element going on where you have some sort of spiritual creature that is making it harder and harder, just like Scully in the X-Files is making it harder and harder for the professor to be able to say, yeah, there is nothing beyond the physical, whatever I can touch or whatever I can see, that's what's real. To me, it was the best written, the most engaging, the most interesting, and honestly, the other funny thing about it is, he's the one I've never heard of. I don't know who this guy is. I'm wanting to check out more from this guy. Bill Myers, I haven't read anything by, I don't think, but my kids have. I bought he has a time travel series that I had for my son, and he also had the Elijah Project, I think it was, and some other things like that we bought for the kids. Frank Peretti, I obviously know because he's one that I've read a lot of. This Present Darkness, Piercing the Darkness, Prophet, The Oath, Monster. Angela Hunt I've heard of, and my wife has read some books by her, but I haven't read any by her. Alton Gansky, I don't know who you are, man. I'm sorry that I don't know who you are, but you did a great job with your story, and it was a great one to cap this cycle off with. And if there was any story that's going to make me say, I want to read what's next, that is the one that made me want to read what's next more than the others. All of them made me want to read what's next, but that is the one that made me want to read what's next the most. So the question is it worth reading? Yes. The strengths of this book comes down to storytelling. There's some really good storytelling going on. There's some convoluted stuff bringing the characters together, but that convoluted coincidence that I'm not a big fan of, it has a storytelling purpose. The coincidences aren't necessarily coincidences, so they're not only forgivable, they're welcome. I don't like coincidences too much. Give me one coincidence at the beginning that kind of gets the story going. That I can live with. Give me some small coincidences maybe as you're going through the story, but don't rely on coincidences for your story. Just don't do that, please. But in a story like this, where these characters are coming together and they don't know why, well, the coincidences are part of a grander plan. And it's the grander plan by these four writers, but within the story, it's definitely the grander plan that's coming from God. And that's another thing I appreciate about this, is Tank is the only Christian character who is very intentional about his faith. You have the professor who has turned his back on his faith. You have Andy, who is Jewish, but not necessarily practicing Jew. And you have Brenda, who knows about faithy things, but I can't remember how involved she is in her faith, and that's probably because she probably wasn't very much involved. But anyway, it's nice because it does give you that perspective coming from that Christian character, but it's not the entire book, and it's not preachy. And the other characters, their interactions with him are realistic, and the other characters bring other perspectives with them. There are some characterizations, the differences between the writers. Like Frank Peretti, when he was writing Brenda, she was not nearly as strong of a character who takes the lead and who is going to jump into the action. She would, in his story, she cowered behind the man, you know, and I just didn't feel like it was the same character making the same kind of choices that she would have made with Bill's story. On the flip side, it's also one person's perspective in each one of these. And that honestly could have been the professor's perspective about her, because he is a grumpy, crotchety old guy who just, anyway. Is it worth reading? Yes, I enjoyed it. Am I going to read the next one? I am. I'm going to read the next one. Am I going to read the third one? Yes, more than likely, unless the second one really lets me down. And then there's the fourth and the fifth that I'll have to figure out how I want to get. But yeah. So thank you so much for spending time with me. If you have read this cycle, if you have read any of the cycles, I would love to hear from you. You can just drop us a note on the video here, or send us an email at studioavery@gmail.com. Let me know what you think about the Harbingers cycles, and I hope to talk to you soon about the next one. So until next time, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for spending time with me, and Godspeed.